All right, now that we have got our technology working, we will call the meeting to order, the Community Preservation Committee. If we could begin with a roll call of attendance to confirm the quorum.
Chairman Backey.
Present.
Member DeJesus.
Present.
Member Loatcher.
Present.
Member Shea.
Present.
And Member Tenzar.
Here.
All right. That makes a quorum, so we are good. First order of business this evening is the minutes of the October 24th meeting. Do we have a motion with respect to those minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes, Mr. Chairman.
And we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion, edits, comments? All those in favor of approving the minutes? Say aye.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? The minutes are approved. All right. The bulk of our business this evening is to begin our annual process of hearing from the applicants for CPA funding this year. We have, I think, 5 this evening. We'll have 5 more at the December meeting, I believe. We will not be deliberating or voting this evening on the merits of any of the applications. What we like to do is give the applicants an opportunity to present their projects, give the members of the committee a chance to ask questions of the applicants so that make sure they have a good understanding of the projects. And we do that for all the applicants, and then usually it's a meeting in January where we then deliberate on all the applications altogether. That will be in a public forum, but we won't be looking for folks to present in that forum. You're obviously welcome to attend if you wish. Keep an eye on the agendas, because that'll give you a date, time, and place for that meeting. This evening, the first one we have is Mass Mills 4. An application has been submitted by Mullins Management Company to restore the historic boiler building and main power building at 169.1 and 169.2 Bridge Street. The applicant is seeking $1.5 million of CPA funding for the project. Do we have someone to speak on behalf of the project? I think you need a mic because I'm not sure if are we being broadcast or?
We should.
Okay, so you definitely need a mic then.
Okay, is this good?
Yep, just make sure the green light is on. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for having me. I'll just put this down. Here representing Mullins Management Co. for Mass Mills 4. We applied last year and were awarded $146,000. So thank you. We do appreciate that. Since last year, is it helpful if I give an update of the project in general, or? Okay. Mass Mills 4 is made up of 2 buildings within the Massachusetts Mills complex. There's currently 3 operating phases, all historic, all rehabbed in a similar condition. We're calling this Mass Mills 4, but it's made up of 2 distinct buildings with one kind of conjoined wall. So we look at it kind of in this context as one project, but for other contexts, it's 2 buildings. We're applying as the one project today, which is Mass Mills 4. It's a total of 85 units. 30 units in the smaller building, which we call the main power building. That is a 3-story building. And then 55 units in the larger building, which is really a 5.5-story building, and that's the boiler building. When we applied last year, we applied as a 100% affordable deal, looking to utilize low-income housing tax credits along with federal historic rehabilitation tax credits and other similar kind of publicly available sources. What has changed since then is we've looked to expedite the full redevelopment of the project. That timeline and that construction timeline was really dictated by the state and the availability of the state subsidies, which has had a pretty long queue of several years. Recently, some programs have either come into additional funding or have been kind of created from nothing, which I can explain, which has allowed us to pivot sort of our funding in hopes of expediting the full redevelopment of the project. So we thought we would begin construction sometime in 2026. We're hopeful we could now begin construction in the summer of 2025. So a pretty significant expedition. And the biggest change that's allowed this is there is a new mass housing equity and debt program called the Build and Forge program. And this is for 80% market rate housing. And this is a pretty significant gap filler. Also, what's become available is the HDIP program through the state. And this is a kind of a two-parter. There is a tax agreement with the city of Lowell, but then there is also a state tax credit component. And so we will be applying in the November round for that. And we have that kind of in the sources when you see HDIP. And so I would say that program is also a market rate program for gateway cities. So what we have done is essentially finding these new sources that were available. We changed from 100% affordable to 80% market rate, 20% affordable. Utilizing these newly available sources, trying to be first in line for them in the hopes to complete this full redevelopment as soon as possible. And so that really has driven a lot of the changes from last year's application. We're not changing the facade. It's historic in nature. It's governed by National Park Service, and we're going through the Lowell Historic Board right now. We are in the zoning process. We've submitted all our documents, which are in review, and we have our first meeting this month, and we'll likely have a second meeting in December, and we're hopeful we'll be fully permitted at that time. We're applying to the HDIP round also in November and early December. We hope to know by the end of the year. And this new mass housing program, which is really the biggest driver of the project right now, they're moving on a very fast timeline. And so our current timeline reflects what is required for that mass housing timeline. They're looking to, essentially have a short list in early 2025, and then they're looking for these projects to begin in mid-2025, which we believe we can accomplish, and that is the goal right now. So I know we were awarded last year under the affordable housing, and I think, currently we'll have 20%, so it's 17 affordable units. Some of those units will also be home, so we'll be sure to coordinate what the AMI percentages need to be, to make sure that we're in line with home. And then also, I think that mass housing is still, going to be our lender, and we'll be also in the equity position, hopefully. So, our affordable restrictions were supposed to be dictated by generally what mass housing was going to allow. So I do think all of that should hopefully still be okay and maintain and not need to be changed. And I think where we've looked at the project, obviously we're asking for a large sum, and we had the ability to enter multiple rounds, and I think this would be our second round, and I think we would definitely be able to do a third round, in 2025 if, we weren't. I don't even know if there's the available funds, so I realize there are some structural limitations there. But I'd say, we're utilizing a lot of outside funds, and I think that, if you're able to look at just even the allocation of the CPA-specific funds to the affordable units, we have plenty of costs to use for the $1.5 million. And so I don't think anything necessarily needs to change from that perspective. I think, we've looked at a lot of scenarios, but our all-in construction costs per unit are likely going to be above $500,000 per unit. We have 17 affordable units. I'm sure there is a way to allocate accordingly. If the affordable housing allocation makes more sense if we're awarded. Is there anything I could answer or clarify? I know that was a lot, and I'm happy to provide any other information or updates.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there questions from the board members? Member Elijah?
Sure. Thank you for the presentation. You answered one of my questions discussing the 80-20 split of what you're looking to do. When in the information that was provided to us, there was a total of a potential of a little over $78 million in funding that was put together. I just want to know if maybe you could describe if that is just potential funding, what you're applying for, what maybe already has been achieved, and that would just give a little more clarification as to where you are in that process.
Sure. I would say also to the 78 number, this might be a little too technical, but what happens is, not all the sources come in at the same time. And so we draw down certain ones and pay off certain ones, mainly a construction loan. Mm-hmm. So we would overfund a construction loan, and as we would get some of these soft sources, mainly some of the tax credits would come and they would pay down. So they're essentially double counted. So the total development costs are roughly that $60 million number, but the ins and outs cause the total sources to be in that 70 range that you had mentioned. And so I think that's just explaining the delta. I would say, we're going in for our first round of the HDIP in November. So I think just kind of going from top to bottom. So that is 2 rounds that we're expecting in there. So, this would be the first round we're applying for. And there's a second round, we believe, that opens up, I want to say, in April. And then it is in kind of the following November, I believe.
Okay.
So we're not awarded that yet. We're hopeful that we would be awarded that. I think, we'll be able to submit our application in both rounds, right? So I think, there's potential to, get awarded twice. And I would also say that contemplates a gross award of $4 million, which, if you split it twice, that's $2 million each. That program does allow funding up to $2.5 million, so there is a little wiggle room there. The federal historic tax credits, that is more formulaic in nature. We have an approved Part 2, and so we do believe that is, it's not guaranteed, but I think that is more at this point, because we've already been submitted and approved. That is pretty much kind of allocated accordingly. I'd say the state historic portion of that, we have a current allocation of about $2.8 million across both projects. About 2.6 of that is at the boiler building, the larger one, and about 200 of that is at the main power building. So there's obviously a gap between what we need for the full redevelopment there and what we're currently allocated. And historically, what has happened is there's a larger allocation up front when you first submit for these state historic tax credits, and then there is also a few rounds of larger allocation when you're just about to break ground on construction. And so between our last few submissions to the state for that allocation, we've made significant design progress, and we're hopeful that basically our next submission will be in the end of January. I believe it's a January 31st or thereabouts submission date. We'll have applied for the HDIP. We'll hopefully, we'll be through permitting through Lowell Historic Board. We'll have a few of these other, milestones completed that'll show this progress, and so we're hopeful we'll get some larger awards. Those awards can also come in during construction, and I think that's also important. They don't need to be in place day one, but there does need to be some sort of, conviction that it's going to happen from a lender's standpoint. So the lenders will have to get comfortable that there's a very good chance of that allocation coming into play. And I think, the team that we have from that perspective, I think, is very comfortable with this type of structure. So it's not new to them. And I would also say we're also looking to utilize, mostly during construction period right now, a loan from the LDFC, the Lowell Development and Finance Corporation. This is a specific loan program, believe it or not, for historic facade rehabilitation. We have $4 million in there, I believe. We're working on kind of solidifying the terms of that, but generally we hope to have at least, I would say, maybe trading paper definitely by the end of the year, but we've had a lot of conversations already with them. So they've been working with us, and the way that we've kind of looked at who we're using with our construction lender is also, cohesive with the LDFC, knowing that there's going to have to be subordination issues with the two. So there's been a lot of coordination from that end. And then I would say, we're looking for $750,000 from home. We've been in touch with Phil Ferreira, and we'll be in kind of parallel with our HDIP submitting for the home funds as well this winter. I think I hit most, if not all. If there's anything else, the momentum equity, that's from Mass Housing. That is paired with a permanent loan. So those come together. And that program is a brand new program through Mass Housing, looking to, increase expedite the stalled projects, essentially, is what it is, across the state. And so typically Mass Housing has been a lender. This is not a debt position. This is really more of what they call a preferred equity position. So it acts as equity. And it's, they're in the ownership portion. But they would also pair it with a permanent loan, so they would also be the lender of the senior permanent loan.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for your presentation. And I noticed our staff gave us some information. And I know you just recently acquired the property. And could you just indicate to us what the schedule is to go before the Lowell Historic Board?
Sure. And I think, so just to clarify, so Joe Mullins purchased the mill complex in the 80s, and the main power building specifically had a hydroelectric power easement until basically mid-2021. And so as soon as we got control of that building, then we really started our pre-development work. We've already submitted everything in front of to Lowell Historic Board, so I believe we're on the agenda for the November meeting.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, and you've been here before, and you continue to do good work, and best of luck to you in your development.
Thank you.
I did have a couple more, if it's okay. Two more quick ones. Did you say a phase one has already been completed on this, or not quite yet?
From an environmental?
Yeah.
So I would say, I want to use the right technical, from an outside perspective of the complex, there historically was contamination in what there's basically an adjacent courtyard. Mm-hmm. There was significant remediation done several years ago. They removed, I want to say, over 20 feet of soil. They basically got down to the water level and the cobblestones, and they got out everything they could. But we still have, ongoing monitoring and other certain things that we're looking to essentially finalize. And so we've been working with DEP over the last couple of years trying to come up with that plan. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that it's a very viscous oil stuck in the cobblestones, and when there are severe drought conditions in the river, the water pressure is low enough, or it doesn't exist, that's when the oil really seeps out. So we constantly have booms right now in the river, and so I can definitely confirm whether we have a phase one. I think we've just done reports on what is needed from a remediation standpoint within the buildings, and as we look at kind of the scope, these are almost zero lot lines. So I guess when I've been thinking about the contamination, it's just been what's inside the building. And there's definitely lead and asbestos, just like any other buildings of, these kind of times. And so we've gotten the main power report completed, and we're pricing it from that remediation standpoint. And we've done the initial on-site activity for the report for the boiler building. And so, by the end of this month or next, we're hopeful to be in the same position for the boiler building.
Okay, so your overall number is trying to incorporate those environmental concerns currently?
So we have $500,000 in the budget for the main power building of interior remediation, and we have, I believe, $1.2 million in the boiler building for other remediation in there. So to collectively 1.7 within that hard cost number.
All right. And then my one other question was, do you know what the percentages are for the market rate to affordable housing in the three other buildings currently in the Mass Mills complex, generally?
Generally, yes. So Mass Mills 1 and 2, which are the larger buildings, I believe between the two, it's about I want to say about 250 units. Those were done under an old existing federal program, so I believe those are 75% market rate, 25% affordable. The latest phase, Mass Mills 3, also known as the Picker Building, that was delivered in 2017, and that one is almost flip-flop. That's 70 units, and I believe we have 53 affordable units, and I want to say 17 market rate units. So collectively, this is a true mixed income, site, and I think that it's worked very well for us so far. So the 80-20, we don't see it as being out of place, and generally consistent across both buildings.
That was my question. Thank you.
I have just I'd like to probe a little bit around the relationship between our funding, levels and timing of our funding, and your construction start. So what you've presented a schedule that has basically a July 2025 construction start. Even if we don't even have $1.5 million to give you this year, but even if we did, and let's say we chose to award $1.5 million to your project, even if we did that, the funds would not necessarily be available to you that soon. I'm not sure exactly how long it takes for the staff to sort of put together contracts after the city council authorizes the appropriation, but sometimes they have not the council has not made that authorization until late in the spring, and then the contracting process takes a little while, so the funds are not necessarily available until after that. I guess the first level question is that okay? The second level question is if it is, it's unlikely, obviously, that we're going to be able to come up with money we don't have to give you $1.5 million, even if you were the only great project we had before us. This year, if we were to say this is a priority project and spread some funding out over multiple years, with or without you coming back for an application, how does any of that relate to when you feel confident you can actually pull your building permit and commence construction?
I think the answer to the first question is that is fine. I think that the timing is generally okay. The important thing that is driving a lot of our conversations, mostly around the construction loan, they're looking for certainty that at the end of the construction loan there will be a source for a takeout. And so the way that we're currently looking at this project is that the mass housing equity and the mass housing senior loan, those are basically forward commitments. So we'll have those in place before we break ground. And those will essentially, whenever we hit kind of stabilization, and I think it's defined a bunch of different ways, but let's just say we're 80% leased up, the outstanding construction loan would get paid off by essentially that mass housing senior loan and the mass housing equity. And what we've done is we've essentially, in the talks with our potential construction lenders, is saying we're going to have ins and outs throughout the construction period and throughout kind of the lease up period. We don't know exactly when they're going to be because we don't know when the soft sources are going to come in. We don't know how fast we're going to lease up. We don't know how soon we're going to spend all of the costs. So there's a few different variables. And so, what we are hoping to accomplish is essentially the ability to kind of draw up and down on this construction loan, knowing that at the end of the day, when we hit the stabilization, we will have the sufficient sources in place for this takeout. And so I think from the timing perspective, we definitely would not need it in place necessarily to break ground as long as it was awarded. And I think, it'll be a lot of conversations, I'm sure, with lenders on what are the odds, right? If we don't get the 1.5, and what do we have to do to kind of bridge that gap, and what do those terms look like? I think we've kind of prepared a multitude of scenarios. I think we're still kind of waiting feedback from lenders on what would be acceptable from them. We're very focused on this project, and I think what's really driving a lot is this mass housing takeout. And so I think we're hopeful that we're also under allocated on a formula basis for the state historic. So there's always a chance we could get more than what's in that pro forma. What we could get several million more. We could get, less. We don't know. So I think there are unknowns from that perspective. So we're working in the flexibility into the kind of the capital stack so that we have the ability to essentially receive some of these funds after construction start. And what that'll likely require is some sort of guarantee on our part as the developer. I think ultimately that's what a lender's likely going to require. I don't know. If I was a lender, I would probably require that, but I think that's kind of where our thinking is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the board?
No, all set.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all.
Oh, no, he's...
Our next order of business this evening is a CPA application for 138 Cross Street. An application has been submitted by the Coalition for a Better Acre to construct 9 affordable home ownership housing units. The applicant is seeking $500,000 of dollars of CPA funding for the project. Do we have someone to speak on behalf of the project? Step on up.
I have a presentation. I'm just going to share it on the Zoom,
Okay.
if that's
So
okay.
if we don't look at you and we look there, that's
Whatever you prefer.
all right.
Okay. So hi, I'm Haley Barrett. I'm a project manager at Coalition for a Better Acre. I'm here today to talk about our proposed project at 138 Cross Street. So 138 Cross Street is located in the Acre neighborhood off of Fletcher Street. It's in close proximity to Market Basket, a lot of local convenience stores, laundromats. It's also within 1 block of 2 of the major bus routes, as well as half a mile away from the Lowell commuter rail stop. A little background on the project. CBA originally purchased the building in 2017 in partnership with the Megan's House Foundation after a fire had destroyed the existing 9-unit building. CBA and Megan's House started construction in 2018 to rebuild the 9-unit building for the purpose of creating affordable rental units and on-site supportive services for women experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. This collaborative venture between the 2 organizations and the former director of Megan's House, Tim Grover, was unable to deliver on the project due to the departure of Mr. Grover from Megan's House immediately after the construction loan closing and subsequent personal issues. The construction for this project is about 15 to 20% complete, but has been stalled since 2018 due to non-performance of the general contractor, which was selected by Megan's House. This project had also suffered a major setback when 6 project-based rental vouchers that were included in the original project budget were not awarded by the Lowell Housing Authority. CBA is currently the 51% majority member of 138 Cross Street LLC and is the managing member of that entity. The Megan's House Foundation currently holds 49%, and we're currently working to remove Megan's House from the ownership entity and make CBA the sole managing member. Our new development plan is to pursue funds through the Mass Housing's Commonwealth Builder program to complete 9 units of homeownership condos. These units would be affordable to households with incomes between 90 and 100% AMI. Our estimated total development cost for this project is $5,290,200. CBA's CPA request is $500,000 with $4,790,200 estimated funding from alternative sources. CBA is planning to submit a Commonwealth Builder application this fall, but the commitment will not be issued until January of 2025. And this is because the Commonwealth Builder program requires a local match for final commitment of funds. And so we will need CPA funding to obtain this commitment. CBA intends to establish the condominium association prior to the completion of construction, conduct an affordable lottery for the units, with the support of our long-term property manager, Maloney Properties, and support the elections for the Homeowners Association. CBA will remove itself from guiding the formation of the HOA over time, and it will operate privately as an HOA. Our timeline or next steps, we plan to submit a Commonwealth Builder application this fall, and expect for commitment to be in January of 2025 on the commitment of a local match. Sorry, this is kind of in the way of your view. Oh no, I can't move it on yours. We expect that all financing will be, it's okay, to close April of next year in 2025. And following the commitment of funds, CBA expects construction to take up to 12 months, depending on permitting and weather conditions. After construction, thank you. After construction, CBA will work with Massachusetts Housing Partnership and Mass Housing to list the affordable first-time home ownership condos on My Mass Mortgage and other affordable first-time home buyer platforms. Interested first-time home buyers will be connected to lenders offering the Mass Housing and One Mortgage loan, as well as the Workforce Advantage and program for additional down payment assistance options. The City of Lowell is also invested in supporting first-time home buyers in the community by providing resources such as the City of Lowell's first-time home buyer program, which utilizes federal home funds, and the One Plus Lowell program, which utilizes Community Preservation Act funds administered through MVHP. So these are the income limits set by the Commonwealth Builder Program by household size. And then we have a sample of a 2-bedroom unit with a 3-person household, and are targeting housing costs at 90% AMI, holding a 10% window to qualify more applicants for these units. Our targeted housing cost is $2,692 a month. And then this is just an example of a 2-bedroom sales price breakdown. So the overall cost will be $278,600 with a monthly housing cost of $2,692. And then this is just my contact information and our interim executive director's contact information for any further questions. But if I could answer any questions now.
Questions from any members?
No, I have no questions. I liked her presentation. I thought she was very clear, and congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Great. I'm just curious, sort of a similar question to what I asked the last person. So those of you who haven't come up yet, you'll probably get a similar question too, which is, given the scale of resources we have available to us, 500,000 is actually a pretty big ask relative to what we have. And I'd like a little better understanding of how it fits into your kind of your overall project if you don't receive 500,000 in this round of our funding, or if you don't receive it at all. How does that affect, what would you intend to do? Does that delay your ability to restart the project? Does that mean you are going to take some risk and temporarily fund a different way, or how would you proceed in this?
So first I wanted to say that we are okay with receiving the funds over multiple years if that is a pathway to funding. Okay. But we're with most of the funds coming from alternative sources, we're okay with taking that risk, and so we don't need a lump sum to start the project.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Our next item this evening is a CPA application from St. Anne's Building Preservation. An application has been submitted by St. Anne's Episcopal Church to restore the 3 historic buildings on the St. Anne's campus. The applicant is seeking $800,000 of CPA funding for the project. Do we have somebody here to speak for this project?
We do. Yes, I think I'm joining you on Zoom. My name is Ginger Salakwa. I'm the new priest at St. Anne's and also at St. John's in Lowell. And representing us in person, we have three members of our vestry, which is our governing board, Jeff Lambert, our treasurer, and Malovich and Tim Hubert, both members of our vestry. The project is focused on preserving and stabilizing the envelope of the building, so repointing the masonry, making some essential repairs to the roof, and also some essential repairs to exterior woodwork. The church has done its best to keep these things up. It's as you all know, if you spend time in downtown Lowell, a wonderful resource to everyone who lives and works there, whether or not independent from its status as a place of worship, also houses some priceless art and historical documents, artifacts of Lowell's past. There are three buildings on the campus. The church building, the rectory, which is the stone building to the right, which was a stop on the Underground Railroad. Edson Hall, which used to house an orphanage when the mills were working, as well as another sort of other buildings that have been kind of combined together into that building. Right now, those buildings are used sort of as almost a nonprofit incubator that allows nonprofits inexpensive space in downtown Lowell, as well as for other activities. And I'll turn it over to my colleagues to answer any questions you might have or to share any other information they'd like as we move forward.
Thank you for that. Do any of the rest of you want to say anything now or wait for questions?
We're on. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Do we have questions from any of the board members?
Yeah, I'll take the role of the chairman's normal position here, Matt, to bring up the question of timeline over the course of this project. Due to the limited funding, is there specific phasing of how you would want to approach some of these different items that are being requested to be done or are spelled out to be done, if the funding were to be over the course of many years, or if it were to be limited in this specific round? What would you be looking to attack first, and what would that look like?
Ginger, did you want us to answer that, or did you want to step in?
I'll start and let you fill in the gaps or correct mistakes. So the sort of order of priority is based just on urgency. The first would be roof repair. Phase one, we picture doing roof repair and just essential pointing. If we were to phase the project, that would be our year one. And then year two, moving to focusing on pointing and doing the most urgent of the external woodwork, and then year three, external woodwork. So that's sort of how we would picture it phasing out in order of priority. And I think you have in the application, and document 5 gives sort of precise numbers for each of those phases. Tim, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, Ginger, I think you hit it on the head. It's going to be based on priority. Many of these items are evident. You can see them directly. So the most important ones are going to take place the first year, used to weatherproof the building. We'll then continue on taking care of urgent items and then highly needed items.
My one other follow-up would be, are there any funds or is there anything available through, and I apologize for my lack of understanding of the Episcopalian Church, but you would call it the Archdiocese on the Catholic side. Is there something or anything available along those sides, and is that of the same type of, ilk? Is there anything that's available in that fashion?
We don't expect you to know the ins and outs of church politics. Regrettably, because the way funding is structured in the Episcopal Church is slightly different than in the Catholic Church, and the Episcopal Church is much smaller. So there's not the pool of money that an archdiocese has available. The aid is primarily available in the term of interest-free loans. So that do eventually have a longer payback period than a commercial loan probably would. And so, of course, our hope would be, because that's a burden that we would have to carry would be to minimize the amount of loan that we have to take, but that is an option. We do, there are some church-specific funding sources like the National Fund for Sacred Places, which has a funding round coming up that we're working on. We've had a conversation with another local foundation that's very open to receiving a grant from us for this project specifically. So those would be the sort of primary alternative funding sources we're looking at.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Did I, folks from St. Anne's, did I leave anything out there?
All right. Guess we're all set. No other questions? All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Our next applicant is 573 to 579 Lawrence Street. An application has been submitted by Manny Cavallero to replace the windows in the historic building at 573 to 579 Lawrence Street. The applicant is seeking $59,000 of CPA funding for the project. Turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Manny Cavallero, 573 Lawrence Street. I'm here on behalf of the building. So the first floor is Cavallero Steakhouse. The second and third are four rental apartments. So that's what we're looking at is the replacement of the windows on the second and third level, and there are approximately 34 windows in place. So a little quick history. My parents bought this building in 1979, so it's about 45 years ago. So we still currently own it. But, you know, the second and third levels need a little work with the windows. So that's...
Okay. Do we have questions from any of the board members about this one?
That's good. Thank you for your comments. My question is, you got your, if I'm not mistaken, I should say, you got some information with respect to replacing the windows from an installer 2-3 months ago. When do you expect to actually do that work?
Well, the timeline, you know, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, you know, whatever the board or the councilors choose, you know, if I get approved in the near future.
The process here is, you know, November we do 4 or 5, December we do 4 or 5, then it goes to the committee in January, February, and, you know, we're not even too sure.
It's something
monies are available.
Yeah, there's something, it can wait, yeah, it's not immediate, you know, it could wait a year or two, it doesn't have to be replaced tomorrow.
Right.
But
you got that bid a couple of months ago.
correct.
Yeah.
So it's just a base, an estimate of the cost to replace and install the windows. Do you have it in your, I'm sure you have it in your packet?
I'd like to just add something for the record. The city of Lowell is probably the 4th or 5th largest city in the Commonwealth. I think it's the 4th.
Yeah, we're number 5 now. Cambridge passed us.
Yeah. But I think they're more here than Cambridge. And I don't mind, for the record to indicate, I've lived in the city of Lowell for a long time, like 83 years. And it's come to my attention that the city of Lowell has probably now 4 restaurants that serve food after 6 o'clock. Now, they say there's 115,000 residents in the city. I think it's probably, there's more to it, probably more. Probably closer to 125,000 restaurants. But here is a historic building looking for some help to stay open. And being a tax accountant by profession in my other life many years ago, I recognized that a restaurant only makes money on 2 items. Not the steak you eat or the dish of spaghetti you eat, but they make money on serving alcohol and selling desserts. That's their profit margin. At least that's the way it used to be when I was a little bit younger. But it just seems that we have 4 restaurants, to my knowledge: the Athenian Corner, Good Times, Four Seasons, and Cavaliero's Restaurant that serves food as a restaurant in the city of Lowell after 6 o'clock. And we have one of the owners coming forward saying he'd like to get some help, and his building qualifies. It has been qualified by the Historic Board. So I just want to say for the record that when we do the numbers sometime in February, March, we ought to remember that. If we can't help out someone like this, then I think that goes against the grain of what Community Development Committee is set up to do. Only under the circumstances. This is not Boston. It's not even Worcester, where the city of Worcester, you go down Main Street, there might be 8 or 10 restaurants there. Much to my surprise, a new restaurant that just opened up in Worcester was Ruth Chris Steakhouse. I was surprised. My wife was happy it was there. We ended up going in. But I just want the record to indicate that I want the members of the board to think about this, the chairman to think about this. Now, I could be wrong, but those are my notes. 4 restaurants in the city of Lowell that serve dinner after 6 o'clock at night for a residency that may be somewhere around 125,000. Guys, if we can't do something to help this proprietor and this family, and they opened up, they closed for a year and a half during the pandemic, and they reopened. So at least the record indicates that, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? I just wanted to follow up on Member Shea's first question about the estimate that you have is from July of this year, and by the time funds could be made available at the end of our lengthy process, it's probably this coming summer at the earliest. So I don't know too many contractors that will hold an estimate that long without you committing. So chances are the numbers may shift a little bit. Are you envisioning that in the end, if we are unable to fund your full request, or if that price becomes higher than what they quoted you in July, are you prepared to deal? Do you have a way to cover the difference? Your application states that there's no other sources in the project.
Sure, yeah, I could take it out of my own pocket, the difference. It wouldn't be much.
Okay, great.
And getting back to Phil's point, I'm the only restaurant that can serve a good steak till midnight in the city of Lowell. Just so everyone knows that, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, and our final application that we're hearing this evening is for 246.1 Market Street. An application has been submitted by Novus Properties LLC for the restoration of the historic turbine building at 246.1 Market Street. The applicant is seeking $812,428 of CPA funding for the project. Do we have someone to speak on behalf of this project?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, sorry, committee, I'm just running a bit late. I just, my wife asked me to drop the kids, and just a little bit traffic took a little bit longer than that.
You made it in time. We
yeah,
just
I know.
called you.
I really apologize on that.
Catch your breath.
Actually, I prepared some slides, but that's okay. I think most of my information are in the application. I think it's, I'll just present the project. You probably know it's the building called Turbine Building. It's actually in the middle of a Market Street Mill. It used to be a cotton or carpet mill back then, but the building has been vacant for many, many years, right? So it's been, I think the building was built in 1910. It was the reason it's called turbine is because if you look at the building, it actually holds 3 big turbines inside the gigantic building. It's totally vacant space, right? So because right now, interesting fact is, there are actually the canal raceway running under the building. Actually, so that's how the building was powered, and so all the mills around it actually use this building to generate their power. There's how they got their electricity. That's how everything worked back then. But the building was kind of vacant for many, many years, and just several developers came and they're trying to put something together, but just never be able to pull it off. It's just because the building was just so difficult to build, and it just also has all the historical requirement to make it happen. So, and I'm working with the current owner that trying to just make the whole project come together. Yeah, I think if you walk in the building, it actually has a gigantic big space, has a lot of big windows. So my plan is to put a floor back in between the buildings and reconvert it into a 29 units apartment. So building actually will walk in with really a big lobby space, and also it's a 6 unit per floor. So it's actually has, all of them has really, it shows the inside of the building, the condition. It's been vacant for many, many years. If you know the history in that mill, that's probably the last building, the last 3 building that's still standing, and that need to be converted. So right now I'm working with architect. We already finished architectural designs. This shows the front of the building that we're trying to restore everything as the back was it was before, and also in the back, because it used to be a factory. Now we're trying to insert some residentials, so we need to open some window in the back. But all the new window openings are actually going to match the existing window styles. We're trying to blend in, and we carefully make sure we don't disturb the canal place 2 and 3 on the side. So this is probably, I spoke to them, this is probably the most amicable way to insert window that cause less disruptions. Yeah, next slide. So some of the unit has really high ceilings. So some of them, I just showed the example of the floor plans. Some has a loft built in because the ceiling is so high. So we just make it really look nice. And most of them will be like 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom configurations. I think that's mostly the market community needs that as a transit-oriented units. This just shows the entire budget. The project is really challenging. Like I said, most of historical restoration projects are just costly to build. Just construction costs keep racking up. The entire budget is about $9.5 million, including acquisition, hard costs, soft costs, and all the financing overhead. So the grant will be around 8% of the entire budget. I think it's important, crucial piece to put all the puzzle together. The majority of the project will be funded by construction loan and equities. Yeah, so right now I'm in the, so we already have the architectural design. We're working on the detail of the mechanicals, all the engineering designs, and because right now this is in the multifamily zone, and I don't need to go to the zoning. I can just go to the building directly, and also, of course, I need the historical approval as well. There has been several designs in the back, which already got a historical approval as well. I believe, my design is actually less intrusive. It shouldn't have any issues on the historical approvals for the designs. So the project take about 2 years to finish, about 1 year to do all the heavy liftings, framing, constructions. and then the other half is about the finishes. Yeah, if you can. So the majority of the fund for the CPA grant is really used the critical exterior restorations. I just don't boil down to exact numbers. I think most of the expenses are masonry and windows. I think those important pieces really showcase really the bulk of the building. The masonry are really in the bad shape, and that they all need to be repointed. We also need to carefully open the new windows to match the existing windows. Yeah, I think this just to conclude that I believe the project is really served the community need, is really redevelop a abandoned building for nearly half a century. No one knows how long it's been abandoned, and it also restore some of the historical piece of the building. You can look at it's matching the Canal Place 1 on the left, and also it developed the housing that the city need really needed. And also I spoke to the condominium Canal 1 and 2. They really support it. I think the support letter is in my application as well. And also I spoke to LDFC. I think they will chip in some of the as a bridge loan or funding as well. All right, that's all the questions. Or
Thank you. We have questions from board members?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. That's an ambitious project you have. I was just wondering if you have done any other work in the city.
Yeah. I mean, I'm property owner and the developer.
Right.
I have many units in Lowell, mostly multifamily, and it's actually right size of what my business is. My office is on 97 Central Street, so I come every day. So in terms of development, not pre-owning it, development I did 231 Central Street, which used to be Empire Salon, like a salon school, across the street of Espresso Pizza, if you know that's the most famous pizza store. So it's we convert to 10 units, I think 9 residential and the 1 commercial. Right now it's a shoe store on the first floor. So that's similar development. It's also an abandoned building. It's used completely different usage. And also I did a project in Chelmsford, which is about the bigger sizes. But in terms of adaptive reuse, I'm currently working on the Wyman Exchange building that is on the Central and the Merrimack Street.
Could you indicate, and this is just a question I have, can you indicate if you have bank financing?
Yeah, I mean, I work with different lenders, but this one, I spoke to 2 lenders. They will chip in for the numbers that they will come in, because that's still going to be a little bit further down the road. They need to a full permit set before they issue it. But Enterprise Bank and the Merrimack Valley Credit Unions,
Right.
that I have the good relationship. Those projects, they fund me before the project I used before. I also use Align Credit. They could be another source. So those are local bank. They know the city. They will invest in the city. I've done business with them before.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wish you the very best. It's a very ambitious project you have, and boy, it'll be nice when it's all finished, I'm sure. Thank you.
All right.
Member Lodger?
Yeah, thank you. My question for you, having done this before and knowing the process, did you say you've already gone before the historic board, or you're going forward?
I spoke to Steve Lowell about this.
Yeah.
I think I need to have a final set. I show him what I have. Like I said, he already approved the previous designs, which is, in my opinion, more intrusive in terms of windows. Mm-hmm. When I have the final, I will definitely get him for the formal approval.
And then my follow to that is, I'm always interested in where you are in the environmental evaluation of all of this, because the costs of that can add.
Yeah.
Have you gone through any initial phases, or waiting until funding and that phase?
I think that's a good question. Actually, the first thing I did is to get a phase 1 assessment.
Okay.
That's already completed. There's no issue for the building.
Okay.
Other than a small air compressor, they said just be careful removing it. There's no like a oil tank or nothing like that.
Okay.
Because the good thing is under the building, there's nothing. It's a canal under there. Can you believe that? I'm telling you, first time I walk in the building, you can hear the canal. There's no basement, almost literally. It's a floating building. I mean, you can imagine. And
Whatever contamination was washed away.
yeah, it's already
I was
been.
literally going to say that.
Right.
Thank you very much.
And also additionally, I'm working with the water and sewer department in terms of how do we connect the water. I've met the water superintendent a couple of times on site. Yeah, I mean, there are solutions, so we're working toward that. Just more like engineering details, right?
Member DeJesus, did you have a question?
Yes, can I ask? I see that you have a start date of construction for June 25. Is that ready to go for you, financing and all?
Yeah, that's all I'm aiming for. I think like I need a team I need a historical, consultant to help me guide me through the whole process, and also engineer and architect. They all know that's a starting day. Actually, they need to be ready at least a couple months before that. So for me to get the closing on the loans.
I guess I would have one quick follow-up to that. With the funding, as you may have not heard as you arrived, but if this funding were to come at a timeline that did not match with your intended construction date, initial construction date, would you have the ability to move forward prior to receiving any funds? Or if you were to only receive a percentage of the funds you requested, would you still intend to move forward on that timeline?
Yeah, I mean, there could be, like in my plan that shows the budget number on the source of fund. In the end, if they need more fund, we just have the investor or equity to chip in to cover the differences.
I want to follow up a little bit on your sources of funding and just help me understand the assumptions you're making. You have which are labeled as HTC bridge loan, and I assume that stands for historic tax credit.
Yeah.
So you are planning to pursue federal historic tax credits?
Yeah,
Are you also applying for state?
Yeah, that's a state credit that for bridge loan we can borrow against the state credit. So that's a borrow against the state credit.
So you're applying just for the state? You're not applying
both,
for the
both.
federal? Both. Okay.
Yeah.
And what the assumption you're making in the amount, what does that translate to in terms of the amount of total credits that you're eligible for?
That, it's like the budget number, that's still a budget because we don't know how many rounds we're going to go through this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using 12 to 15% as a state, and then the loan you have a discount against that, against the HTC amount, the credit amount.
So you're assuming the full amount that you're potentially eligible for minus that discount, or are you already assuming you're not going to
already budget discount,
maximize
so
what you could get?
The state credit, technically, you have maximum 20% of the QRE, all the hard costs, plus some soft costs. But normally, most projects get like a 12 to 15% out of that. And then the loan, you can get some discount out of that as well. So you can get, let's say you got, let's say 1 million in the state credit, that you can only borrow like 800 or something.
So you're borrowing, or are you obtaining equity?
No, that's a borrowing.
Are you selling the credits for equity? That's what most people normally do.
Yeah, I mean, we can sell it, but I think selling, you got to sell at the end of the project. So instead of selling to someone, you can
and then you borrow.
and say, hey, why don't you give me a discount?
Okay.
Instead of $1, you give me like 80 cents on the front.
All right. Well, a very long way of asking my most direct question, which is there an opportunity potentially for this project to gain more equity from historic tax credits than you're currently assuming?
You mean the equity in terms of the bottom line, the credit?
Equity from the credits themselves, not your own equity that you're putting into the deal.
From the historical tax credit?
Tax credit equity.
That, I'm really budgeting conservatively. That's what the consultant told me.
Yep, okay.
Because I don't want to over budget it. I can't get it. So he said, just use 12 to 15%. That's what you can get. Just stay with that. Don't over thinking you can get 20% as what you technically allow. It's just dangerous to budget that.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our applicants who were here this evening. That concludes the formal portion of our agenda. I think, do we have any other comments from CPC members?
Nope.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Thank you all very much, and hope everyone has a good night. And again, since you arrived late, I'll just reiterate that we don't actually deliberate this evening. We are hearing applications, and